Welcome, everybody. My name is Linda O'Connell. We are excited to have you join us for our JA Speaker Series Lunch and Learn. I'd like to remind you all just a little bit of the etiquette, that we'd like to make sure you remain muted and your cameras off for your video. And now I will turn the microphone over to our President and CEO, Sid Vivek.
Thanks, Linda. Normally you have a meeting and you're excited to see all the people in their seats. And I have to tell you, it's equally exciting to watch all the names pop up on the screen and everyone come into this room. So thank you so much for joining us. As Linda said, my name is Sid. I work here at JA. We're just so excited to have all of you. Like so many of you, our worlds have kind of shifted and changed in so many ways over the last 3 months. And as we were getting to share before everyone came on the call, what's as much unfortunate and really challenges as we faced, the silver lining I would suggest is that it's forced us to not only innovate, but connect in some ways more and in different ways and be more efficient. And so I'm really excited for you all to join us. JA of San Diego has never done a speaker series like this. And we're so grateful for you joining this one and the several others that we've had with leaders in the business community here in San Diego. Today is going to be no exception. And I will tell you in full disclosure, Jack in the Box has been a tremendous supporter of junior achievement. And again, given my time in San Diego, I would say I know that they support so many really worthwhile causes. So I'm very excited for you guys to hear from the leader at Jack in the Box and someone who I know has made youth development and supporting and investing and pulling up our youth, putting a not necessarily a hand out, but a hand up for our young people across San Diego. So with that, I'm excited because I won't do any of the talking, and I'm excited to introduce a JA ambassador, Ms. Sydney Paul. Sydney, take it away.
Hello, my name is Sydney Paul. I'm a current 10th grader at Mount Carmel High School, and I've been a junior ambassador for about 7 years now. Through my dad, who currently owns 7 Jack in the Boxes all throughout San Diego, I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Lenny. After growing up in Long Island, New York, Mr. attended Drexel University and Nova Southeastern University. After graduating, he began working on ExxonMobil, where he later joined Jack in the Box. In 2001, he began working at Jack in the Box as a director of convenience and fuel operations, where he later worked his way up to president in 2012 and CEO and chairman of the board in 2014. Mr. has since been working for Jack in the Box for 18 years. In his spare time, Mr. enjoys playing golf and over the years has enjoyed coaching track and field. He's married to beautiful Miss Allison, and together they have had 3 boys. An interesting fact that some of you may not know is that those 3 boys have made up one of my favorite musical group, the Commas. Without further ado, Mr. Lenny.
Thank you very much. It's good to see your face, Sid. Tell your dad I said hi, and I appreciate you so wonderfully introduced me to the group. I'm glad to be here today and just to share a few things with all of you about what we do at Jack in the Box. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and then we will get going. All right, so my host will need to enable me to share, so we'll ask for a little help there. All right. Okay, I think we are ready to go. So what I want to talk to you about today is how Jack in the Box uses data to attract new customers. So one of the things that many people think about is, especially business people and entrepreneurs, they'll think about how they can come up with a great new idea and that idea will go make them money. But actually the way that it typically happens that you figure out how to build a business is you figure out what a consumer's needs or desires truly are, and then you build your business to meet that need or desire. And there's many ways that you can meet that need, and so you try to meet it in a way that is differentiated or distinct or unique so that the consumer falls in love with you and continues to come to your restaurant. So at Jack in the Box, we have historically looked at sets of data to try to figure out why people wanted to come to Jack in the Box and what they would most likely purchase once they got there. So I'm going to start with a question and just ask if anybody in the audience would be able to answer it. If you look at this list of just facts or information about a potential consumer, like their age, their gender, their race, the zip code they live in, how often they visit a restaurant. When you look at that list, does anyone know what that is called? That type of information has traditionally been called. I'll give you a second to see if anyone can answer it.
Lenny, in the chat, we've got PII and demographics are the two things that have been shared as answers.
Yeah, and they're actually both correct. It's more traditionally been referred to as demographics. And thank you for that answer, whoever gave it, spot on. And so when you look at those demographics, typically we'd look at this type of stuff, and then we would correlate people who fit into these groups to specific behaviors, and we'd say, hey, that's the group that's looking for what we have. So let's find a way to continue to target them. Let's go find them where they are, and let's bring them into our restaurants. What we found over time is that this information is just not enough. When we look at age, gender, and you see the short list here on the left, it doesn't tell us enough about why people choose us. It doesn't tell us enough about the messages that we're putting out there and whether or not they actually appreciate or are attracted to those messages. It doesn't tell us how we need to engage them, speak to them through social media, digital advertising, billboards, through coupons, or through television advertising. It really doesn't tell us enough anymore because the world has become so much more complex. It used to be that if you had a restaurant, you essentially would open your doors, fly your flag or put your sign on the wall, and consumers who lived in the area would go to your restaurant. But now you have third-party delivery, you have apps that allow you to order food ahead and go pick it up. You can go to a restaurant and dine in, or you can go through a drive-through, you can take out. And so there's so many ways. And then we're competing not just against any restaurants anymore, we're competing against convenience stores that also have food, supermarkets that have food, and just about everybody has some opportunity to prepare food ahead if you don't want to cook for yourself. So what we found is that consumers can no longer be attracted or identified as your core consumer just by looking at this information. You got to go a little deeper than that. And so what we found out is that the value in data doesn't come from the data itself, but some type of human insight that makes the data actionable. And so this is an example of what that looks like. So if you look on the top left, these folks on this screen actually represent groups of people who love Jack in the Box. As we've gone out and researched the type of people who come to Jack in the Box, instead of saying things like a certain percentage of our consumers are Latino, or a certain percentage are Black, or a certain percentage are white, or a certain percentage are rich, and a certain percentage are blue collar or white collar. We don't look at those types of things anymore. Instead, what we look at is what type of lifestyles are our consumers living, and why is it that within that lifestyle, they are most often attracted to us. And so as we've done this research, we found that, for example, in the top left of your screen, gamers love Jack in the Box. And I'm assuming that most of you know what I mean when I say gamers, but these are the folks who are playing all those online interactive games. In many ways, it's the way that they connect with their friends and stay connected with their sort of social circles, even when they can't be together. It's also fun, it's competitive, it's team-based. There's so many ways that you can interact in gaming that keeps people engaged. And what we found is that sort of that gamer life is really attracted to Jack in the Box. And oftentimes, because Jack in the Box is open 24 hours a day, oftentimes gamers are playing these interactive games into all hours of the night, and they know they can get Jack in the Box food delivered, or they can take a break and go to the drive-through. Real interesting ways that they can continue to engage and get their needs met by a restaurant. Other examples in the bottom left, sneakerheads. Some of you probably know a lot about. These are the folks who have every type of special sneaker that's available in the market. And many times they're trading sneakers that were in the market years ago that are now being resold. Sneakers that have never come out of their package and some that have been used, but exclusive sneakers with the exclusive sets of colors and things that people are looking for. Well, that whole group of sort of sneakerheads, people who engage in that lifestyle, boy, do they love Jack in the Box. And there are other examples that you can see, on the screen: free spirits and do-it-yourself hustlers, culture seekers, people who are looking to extend, their events. Let's have this epic night, but then let's continue all the way to the next morning. Who's going to participate in that? Jack in the Box. And so as we look at all these folks, we start to ask critical questions around, if these are the people who are attracted to Jack, and these are the people who are sort of our core customers, how do we go find them? And one of the easiest examples of how we've changed the way we do things is that in the past, we would be on television with just about all of our advertising dollars, always for sporting events or television events, Super Bowl, things like that, big advertising campaigns. That's how we try to attract our consumers. But now when you look at things like gaming, well, we can advertise right through the games, and we can actually prompt the gamers that we have what they're looking for. Or for the folks who are looking for things like sneakerheads, for example, they're all over social media. Sneakers are marketed through digital marketing. We can attract those consumers through the digital avenues that they use, like Facebook and others. When we look at social media today and the way that people interact and they connect with what you're doing that's relevant to the culture, and then they spread the word to other people, we can be involved in that messaging. We can touch base with influencers. We can have them try our food. We can have them do reviews on our food and post that information so others can see it. And those are all completely different than what we did in the past, when it was almost 100% television advertising and billboards on a highway, right? And so things are changing. We're learning that attracting to these lifestyles is actually more important than attracting to or focusing on just the demographics. So we talked earlier about what that list of things was called, and it was called demographics. But when we look at lifestyles now, we don't really call it demographics anymore. We call it psychographics, which is an easy way to think about how people think and the things that they get involved in. In Jack in the Box's case, what we found is that there's this one psychographic. When you boil it all down and try to make it simple, and we always have to do that because it'll stay very complex, and it's hard to sort of take action against unless you make it simple. And so what we do is we say, okay, when you look at all these different folks who are doing all these different things, what is it that they have in common? And the one thing that they have in common is this sort of limitless mentality. What they believe is that there are no limits on the things that they can or should do or get involved in. So if you want to decide to have a side hustle where you're trading in sneakers, but your day job is, you're an accountant at a company, what's wrong with that? If you decide that you're going to be on social media as a personality and you're going to make money by reviewing restaurant food and sharing with people what you think about that food and gaining followers, and then through that sort of followership that you've built up, you're actually able to then go make money by selling advertising on your own social media pages. Again, live limitless. An easy way to think about it is sort of like Uber Eats drivers and Lyft drivers and folks like that. Most of those people are doing it as a side hustle, right? They're doing many other things, but then they also have this little side hustle. And this whole limitless mentality that says, do what you want, get involved in multiple things, explore and be creative. That's how these folks are living. And what we find is that people who have that mentality, they feel like Jack in the Box is a brand for people like them. You might ask the question, why do they think that? Well, you think about the Jack in the Box menu, right? We're a hamburger company, but I'll ask the question and see if anybody can guess this, and if it comes up in the chat, see if maybe you can help me. But when you think about hamburgers, we sell a ton of hamburgers, but can anybody guess how many tacos Jack in the Box sells every minute of the year?
There's a lot of thinking, Lenny. So I will let you know as it pops in. Our first guess from I think one of our students, it was 50.
Okay, much higher than that.
All right, some people are doing some calculations. We now have 5,000.
All right, a little too high. So I'll give one more guess. Go ahead, let's see what else you got.
The latest guess is from Colin is 500.
That's pretty close, Colin. We actually sell a little over 700 tacos per minute, which is just about 500 million tacos a year. It's the #1 product that we actually sell. And it's pretty interesting because Jack in the Box is not seen as a traditional hamburger player. Yes, we sell hamburgers and French fries and drinks and shakes, but we also sell things like chicken teriyaki bowls and tacos and egg rolls and jalapeno poppers and grilled chicken sandwiches and onion rings and salads and chicken fajita pitas. I mean, our menu is pretty much limitless, and there's really no boundaries around what we attempt to do as a fast food player. We essentially, from the day we started, have always been a company that was about breaking the norm. So Jack in the Box was actually the first fast food restaurant to actually create a drive-through system with an intercom, right? There were drive-throughs in the past. People actually used to drive through these restaurants in the past, or convenience stores in the past, to get things like ice and milk and other staples, but there was never an intercom system. So Jack in the Box, to make the line much faster, put an intercom system in. We were also the first brand to ever sell everything on the menu any time of day. So if you want breakfast in the middle of the night, that's okay. We're also the first brand to be open 24/7. We're also one of the first hamburger brands, I think we are the first hamburger brand, not to make the food until you order it. The traditional, way of doing things for this industry for a long time was to cook the food ahead of time, stick it on a warming shelf, and when someone ordered it, you gave it to them. But we wanted to give people fresh food in the moment, so we cook it when you order it. So we pretty much changed the game for fast food, and in many ways invented the game for fast food. This little sort of fast food company from Southern California that's just got over 2,000 restaurants. So the whole sort of persona of Jack, our founder, has been go for it, right? Or live limitless. And so we found that people who share that sort of value system, they love Jack in the Box. And so now we really target those lifestyles that I showed in the previous page, right? We target these folks here in the places where they live and meet and socialize. We target them to be able to attract them to Jack in the Box and let them know what we've got going on in our space. And so in conclusion, before we take some questions, what I would say is, if you're thinking about being involved in business or any industry, always take a moment to think about two things. From a data perspective, think about how you can use data to figure out what is happening in the marketplace that is identifying a need that's unmet. And then how you as an entrepreneur through your business can meet that need, or maybe meet that need better than the competition is currently meeting it. The other thing you can think about is, once you're running a business, you're constantly having to make decisions and make changes. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to actually use data that the consumer is willing to provide to you to tell you what decisions are gonna work out best for you. Simple example, when Jack in the Box comes up with a new product, we don't just guess whether or not the consumer is gonna like it. We actually get hundreds and hundreds of consumers to try that product. And then we change the product, and we have hundreds more try it. And we change it again, we have hundreds more try it. And we keep doing that until the consumer says, that's the one. That particular iced coffee that you made, it's great. I would definitely come back and buy that, and I'm willing to spend $2.49 for it. Once we have that information, we can feel really sort of secure and comfortable putting that in the marketplace. So data can tell you where to build a business, data can tell you where to take your business, but ultimately you don't have to guess at it. You can communicate and research and speak to the folks who you want to sell products to, and they fundamentally will give you the answer. And at Jack, that has proven to be the most successful way to do things for us. We've been a successful business for almost 70 years now. We have, like I said, 2,250 restaurants, just over 115 successful franchisees. Our corporate staff is close to 400 people, and it's a wonderful culture of individuals that are very sort of accepting and open to each other's ideas and each other's differences. And I think as a result of that wonderful culture, we continue to be a very innovative place in which to work and which to do business. So I appreciate you all giving me the opportunity to share with you some of what we do to make decisions and attract customers. And now I'll open it up for questions.
All right. I think our ambassador, Sydney, I don't know if you had a question. We want to start off with Sydney, and we have some questions now coming into the chat. Um,
Yeah, I just had a question. What do you think 2 to 3 important traits are for students to have or be working on that will help set them apart from the field or their competitors in the future?
Hey, Lenny, you're on mute.
oh, there we go.
Yeah, it's a new world. So the first thing I would share is really about honesty and integrity. I think that we use that word very loosely in society today. And in fact, many people will say, you know, I'm an honest person, or I have integrity. And when you really dig deep into the way people make decisions and the way they treat other people, what they're willing to share and not share, you know, integrity is something that over time you really are able to see very clearly in the people alongside you. And so, you know, I have this philosophy about dealing with people in business. I will always sort of be brutally honest, and I expect them to be the same. What does that mean? It just means don't hold back the truth that can actually allow us to have the most relevant conversation, attack the most difficult problems, or in many ways wake us up to things that we need to change about ourselves or the approach that we're doing business. And it takes a tremendous amount of integrity in order to do that, because integrity can drive you, right? We don't look at it that way. But we look at it as, I don't lie and I'm not deceptive. Okay, well, that's one element of it. But another element of it is this responsibility that you put on your own shoulders. It says, if I know something, if I feel something, if I'm witnessing something, am I willing to take that courageous step of actually talking about it? Or am I going to be the kind of person that talks about it with other people in the hallway, person to person that I should be talking to their face, right? And so there's so many elements of this, I think, that we miss because we think it's just about not lying. And it's not about that. It's about living in truth in everything that we do and being willing to stand up for that truth. And when we see something going astray, taking a step out and saying and doing something about it. So the first thing for me would be integrity. The second thing is closely related to that, and that was what I mentioned around courage, and we call it in business managerial courage, right? So many people say things like, I want to run a business one day, I want to be a CEO one day, I want to fill in the blank, whatever it is. But the way they behave is actually not in concert with what they say they want. And so, for example, I had a group of people back years ago who wanted to be regional managers of Jack in the Box restaurants. And they were all very talented people, but they had all only run one restaurant up until that point. But now they were going to run 10 restaurants. And so I brought them into a training session that I led. And one of the sessions, they walked into the room and I said, everyone be seated. And I said, what I want you to do is draw a number out of a hat. And so they all drew a number out of a hat. There were 20 people in the room. So 1 through 20, they had numbers. And I said, okay, who's got number 1? And they raised their hand. I said, okay, I need you to come over to my table, grab one of these green cards off the front of the table, and then go to the front of the room and speak to the audience for at least 2 to 5 minutes about what's on that card. And they were petrified, like, oh my gosh, he's gonna make us come, no preparation, no nothing, just come and grab this card and go out front and talk to everybody. And we did series and series of that where people had to go through that process of taking a random card that they didn't know, you know, what was going to be talked about, and take it to the front and then address the audience. Well, when we talked about why I was putting them through their paces and doing that, what I was trying to help them understand is that this is the safe place for you to build up your courage. Because when you go out and run those 10 restaurants, you are oftentimes going to be the only person that is visibly in charge of this operation. And all of your people are going to be relying on your voice, your response, and your ability to stand in the moment when they need you and provide whatever direction or leadership is needed. You can't be that kind of person who says, I want to run 10 restaurants, and in the same breath say, I don't like speaking in front of people. I get a little nervous when I have to be questioned on the spot and answer directly. I want time to prepare and go. That's not how business works. Business is in the moment, and things happen, and you've got to address it as a leader. And I was teaching them all that through that exercise, because you can say you want something, but until you actually do what's necessary to get that thing, then you're just dreaming, but you're not actively actually pursuing those dreams. And so it's one very small example of sort of teaching people and getting prepared for them to use this managerial courage to move forward. And then the last thing that I would speak to, and actually I'll give you two more, is what we call learning agility. When you go through things in your life, you learn from them. But learning agility is not just saying that you're going to take that lesson in that specific instance and know how to deal with that specific thing the next time it happens. Learning agility is when you take something that happens in one specific instance and you draw the deeper lessons from it that you can apply to something completely new. And most folks don't take the time to think deeper about what they learned. So for example, let's say you had a conflict with somebody and you were trying to get a project done at school, and then you end up in a big argument with your team, and then you reflect back on everything that happened and you say, well, I showed up to a meeting and I was unprepared and I got challenged. I'm making this up, right? I got challenged by my peers. And I got really upset because some really horrible things had happened in my personal life that actually prevented me from getting that work done. And I didn't want to talk to them about it. So instead, I got very defensive and I shouted and I told them, to get off my back, right? And then everyone got upset and it devolved into something less productive. Okay, you can walk away from that and say, well, there was nothing to be learned. I had a bad day and then I didn't respond to my team well. Next time I'll just respond better, right? Or you could think deeper than that and say, look, at the end of the day, did you show up unprepared? Yes, you did. Did you ever accept and take full accountability for that? No, you didn't. You just got defensive. Okay, so that might be one element of it. And another element of it might be just being vulnerable enough to say, I apologize that I didn't show up prepared. I had something going on in my personal life that was extremely disruptive, even if you didn't want to talk about it, right? And it prevented me from being prepared. This won't happen again. I won't be making a habit of it. And I do apologize to you guys for not being prepared. Here's what I'm willing to do to get this thing back on track, right? Because that deeper understanding of what's going on can be applied to so many other situations in your life, right? And so this learning agility thing is really draw the deeper lesson from whatever's going on. And then the last thing I'll say is humility. The most successful leaders are humble enough to take ideas, suggestions, feedback from anyone, anybody that they interact with. They genuinely embrace what everybody has to offer. They don't see themselves as better than anyone else. They just have a role to play. And the best thing they can do is try to bring the best out of everybody else around them. But the world isn't revolving around them. In fact, in many ways, they look at it as I'm here to serve all the other people. And I think if you can have that sort of humble spirit about you, then when you're out there thinking about how you can compete and get ahead, don't think about the person next to you as, they're my enemy, I'm competing against them to get X, Y, or Z. Instead, think, how do I put forth the best version of myself that I possibly can? And as a result of doing that, afford myself as many opportunities as I possibly can. I think when you think about it that way, you treat people in a healthy way while also pushing yourself to be great at what you do.
Awesome. Thanks, Lenny. We've got a few questions lining up here, so I will go to them. I have one myself, but I will hold off. An interesting question that came in related to your presentation is from Ack McSweeney here. Lenny, do you gather your data through your financial results, or does Jack in the Box have a separate data analytics department that uses the data to forecast future demands and trends?
Great question. We actually do a little of both. Some companies are big enough to keep people on a full-time staff all the time. What we have are sort of senior leaders and analysts, that a small group of them, less than 10, that work on this type of stuff. And then when we need to just gather a bunch of data for either them to analyze or data that's already been analyzed for them to use, we'll go out and we'll purchase that from other analysts.
Awesome. We have actually two questions, one from JJ and one from Colin, that I think go together. So I'll ask them kind of together here. One, JJ says, I love Jack in the Box. So cool to be here. But then JJ asks, how did you become the CEO? And kind of, I think similar to that, Colin asks, what did you do to make the connections required to run a successful business? And I think those kind of go together.
Yeah, so a couple things. First off, some jobs require specific education. And so in this case, I think, most CEOs have an undergraduate degree in some area of business. In fact, many will have a graduate degree in some area of business. I went to Drexel University for undergraduate in finance, and then I went to graduate school at Nova Southeastern for a master's in business administration. I worked really many different sides of business to try to understand so much of what happens in a business that I could eventually get to a point where I could run the whole thing. So, I started off running convenience stores, and I was a gas station manager for ExxonMobil. I was cleaning toilets and checking inventories, and that was part of a management training program that they had. And at the time, I was criticized a lot from my friends for coming out of college and taking a job in a gas station, but I didn't see that as a negative thing. I just saw it as part of a career path, right? They were investing in me to have me learn the business. And in order for me to one day be able to run a bigger part of the business, I surely had to learn the business. So I was more than willing to clean toilets and do whatever I had to do to learn the business. It was actually a lot of fun serving the customers and keeping the convenience stores looking great and stocked and all the rest. So I started there, and then I bounced around to different jobs. I was a district manager for company stores. I was a franchise business consultant. I was a merchandising manager, purchasing product and placing it in the store and pricing it and promoting it. I worked in supply and logistics for oil and gasoline distribution and figuring out what was the optimal way to run these trucks through their routes to deliver, whether it be fuel or oil, in a way that reduced the overall use of diesel fuel and the least number of hours necessary to get that product delivered, right? I also was an analyst, one of these folks that I talked about. I worked as a pricing analyst looking at fuels pricing back at ExxonMobil, as well as I worked as an analyst in an office looking at marketing and operations. And then, through all those jobs, I got to a point where they said to me, look, we'd like you to run a bigger part of the business. So they moved me from, at the time, Fairfax, Virginia, to Southern California to run the franchise business out here. When you think about what I was responsible for, I was responsible for pricing the fuel, running the operation, both company and franchise. I was responsible for leading the people. I was responsible for safety, because safety is a big thing in oil companies, marketing and merchandising, all the things that I learned along the way. I now was prepared to actually run the whole business. I did that for a while, and then the company wanted to move me to Chicago, and then I made a personal decision. At that time, I had started with Mobil, and it became ExxonMobil. So it was a slightly different company when it was ExxonMobil from the one I started with Mobil. And I had decided, maybe it's time for me to stay in one place. My wife and I had moved 9 times in 11 years, and we had our second child on the way. And I said, I don't want to move to Chicago. I think I'm going to get a job here in San Diego. And so I started working for Jack in the Box as the director of convenience store operations, and sort of worked my way from that into restaurants as a regional vice president, and then a vice president of operations, and then chief operating officer, president, and then CEO. So I really moved around quite a bit. I don't believe that if you want to run a whole business, you should focus on one function only. I think you should push yourself to learn multiple functions so that when you're in the lead, you're actually able to understand more about what's going on in the business.
I think that's a great story and timeline, because we have the next question is around the advice you would give to someone who wants to be CEO. And I don't want to put the words in your mouth, and I'll let you answer it, but it sounds like it doesn't just happen. There's clearly a path, and it's a long one, but I'll let you answer that in your own words.
Yeah, I think it is a long path. And I don't believe, and this will sound weird, there's a balance, right? It's sort of like someone told me once before, they said, if you hold a bird in your hand gently, the bird will live and you'll be taking care of the bird. But if you hold on a little too tightly, you'll actually be hurting it, right? And that's the same way you have to manage your career. If you look at your desire to become fill in the blank, whatever it is, and you hold on too tightly, you actually might hurt the outcome. And what I mean by that is sometimes we're focused so much on what we want, we're not focused on what's right in front of us that needs to be done to actually get there. And so, folks, like I said, who were so focused on the outcome of being a CEO, for example, in their minds, scrubbing that toilet at Mobile was beneath them. And I actually got criticized from many of those folks saying, why would you go start off as a sales associate at Mobile scrubbing toilets when you just went to school and got an undergraduate degree? I said, well, first of all, this isn't all about me scrubbing toilets forever, but I don't mind starting wherever they want me to start to learn the business. And I don't really see anything wrong with running a gas station. What's wrong with that? And so, I mean, the folks who ran gas stations were making good money, $70,000 a year to run a gas station. That's a really good living for most people. And so I'm like, well, I don't know why anybody would look down on the work. The work is really hard. It takes a bright person. It takes a lot of hard work to learn the business. I respected it. But I think when you think that certain things are beneath you because I'm going to be a CEO one day and I couldn't possibly, do that. I think what happens is you're holding on to that bird too tightly. You're holding on to that outcome so tightly, and you're not paying attention to the fact that those experiences that are in front of you that you can have, if you just give yourself an opportunity to learn and grow through those experiences, that's actually your best chance of becoming, a CEO. And so I've always said to everyone who's asked me about how to manage your career, I said, manage your career like this. Wake up every day knowing that you're excited to do whatever's been asked of you. And also wake up every day knowing that you're valued for having done so. And if you can't answer those two questions with an affirmative, then go do something else.
Thank you for that. My question, I think you've already answered when I saw you when I asked you before. But someone's recently one of our questions. Again, this is Ack McSweeney, so I'm going to share this because this young person has put themselves out there. But it'll go to the bigger question because they say, "Thanks, Lenny. Will you be looking for financial analysts to adapt to the post-COVID market, inquiring as a fresh graduate looking to work for a great company?" So having said that, I love that they were bold enough to ask, but I think it asks, it lends itself to a bigger question. How has COVID not only adjusted your business now, but how is it perhaps adjusted both trajectory and vision going forward?
Yeah, so there's a couple trends that are emerging out of COVID. So just before the call started, we were talking a little bit about this. I actually started hearing about COVID-19 back in January and started asking a lot of critical questions about my team, about the virus with my team and the impacts that it might have on our business. We started to look at things like SARS and MERS, previous pandemics that had hit parts of Asia and other parts of the world. And we started to study what all happened there and what were some of the lasting effects of it. And it was interesting. What you find actually when you look at these types of things is that as much as we believe that the vast majority of things will change, that's actually not what happens. The vast majority of things stay the same. And then a few critical things change. And those are the things that you're looking for. And so, one of the trends we're seeing with the pandemic is way more food being delivered to people's homes. And so some folks are saying, hey, that's probably going to continue. We need to focus on delivery. Well, maybe it's going to continue, or maybe it's going to continue in one small segment of delivery, right? So if I had to guess what's going to happen with delivery, I still don't believe that individuals are going to gravitate toward delivery as the number one way that they purchase food. And the reason I don't believe that is because there's typically a delivery fee or some surcharge that makes that food really much more expensive for that individual. However, when you look at what's happened in other industries like pizza, that might give you a glimpse to behaviors that might now start impacting the rest of the industry. Nobody orders pizza for one person, right? And if they do, they're ordering a whole pizza pie anyway. So it's enough for many people, even if one person is going to eat the whole pie, right? Well, what we're seeing in our business is when people order Jack in the Box for delivery, these are huge orders. Our average ticket is typically around $10, let's say. But people will order $40, $50, $60 worth of food to be delivered to their home, just like they would have done with pizza. They're ordering an entire family's worth of food. So maybe it's that that's going to continue in a post-pandemic, because that can be really efficient. Even with a surcharge, you're feeding 6 people and you got to pay $5 for delivery. That's, a lot of people are going to tip the pizza guy that anyway, right? So you can sort of make sense of that. But when you're getting a $10 meal that just now costs $15, you're having a hard time making sense of that delivery, right? So I think we have to dig deeper using the analysis to figure out what are those little critical things that are going to reshape what we see going forward. But I don't believe it'll be everything.
Thanks, Lenny. I apologize. I cut out there. Apparently my internet's not very good. Well, I appreciate that. I'm looking now, and I think we have touched on most of the questions that have come through. My final question, because it was in the paper, so I can say this, but I'm fairly certain you will not be the president and CEO of Jack in the Box for too much longer. What is next for you personally?
Yeah, good question. So, I've been one thing about career management is that you need to really get to know yourself, and you will through the process. You will know more and more about what makes you effective, what pushes your buttons, what wears you out, what gives you energy. And so, over time, one thing that I've learned about myself is when it comes to business, I'm all in emotionally. Some people can just sort of do a job and they can think about it really well and they can execute it really well, but they don't let their emotions get wrapped up in it. And I wish I could be that kind of person, but I'm not. So once I got to the place where I started to realize, hey, look, I'm losing some of my emotional attachment to this business, I knew that it was time for me to retire, and I didn't want to be guilty of accepting a paycheck that I didn't feel like I was completely committed to earning. And so, I'm 50 years old, and most people are saying, hey, why are you retiring so early? And I just explained to people, because it's the right time. I'd feel like a phony if I stayed any longer. So it's time for me to go while I'm still engaged enough for people never to feel like I took my foot off the accelerator. Now's the time to go, because I know the window's just cracked open where I'm starting to think about what's next. And I know it's not going to be Jack in the Box. And I think that's an unhealthy place for me to be if I want to run the business successfully. So I decided to move on. And I've always had a passion for teaching. It's something I've wanted to do my entire life, but somehow this business thing kind of got a hold of me, and I stayed fully engaged in it. But I would like to teach. I'm going to take probably 6 months to just sort of decompress from all the years of, working hard and not sleeping very much. And I'm going to spend more time with my family, things that I haven't gotten to do for large parts of my career. And, just have a little fun and slow down for a minute. And then the idea is for me to get involved in teaching. It's been really the next chapter of my life, at the university level, maybe even at the high school level, doing a little bit of teaching. But I'm going to keep my mind open, give myself about 6 months or so to just sort of explore and not try to make a snap decision. And then I'll sort of wade into the water little by little so that I want to learn through the process what's going to give me energy, and then go ahead and fully immerse myself in it at some point.
Well, Lenny, as you know of JA, there are lots of opportunities to mentor young people, and I put a shameless pitch, just like as one of our participants did. We've got a lot of young people who I think could benefit from your insight and your experiences, and so whether it's at the college level or high school or at a place like JA where young people are trying to find their economic futures, I think you will be successful no matter what. So I think on behalf of Junior Achievement of San Diego, on behalf of Sydney, and I know she's there, and her dad, so we want to thank them for being a part of this. And on behalf of all the participants, thank you so much for all that you have done for Jack in the Box and all that you will do going forward.
Thank you so much, Sid. And thanks again, Sydney. Appreciate spending time with all of you. I just want to wish all of you the best. And I'm going to leave you with this last thought that is, you are way more capable than you at this time can ever imagine that you are. And as you go through life's experiences, you'll learn that. And I would just tell you, just stay true to yourself and your passions, and you will find success and fulfillment in whatever you choose to do.
Thanks so much, Lenny. And I'll leave you with one last thing that was posted in the chat, and I won't say who it was, but I'm sure, or it goes without saying, but I think it's worth saying, we are going to miss Lenny's leadership at Jack immensely. So one of your colleagues.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.